So if you're someone that's in pain or you've had pain, then it's really important for you to understand how different treatment approaches affect the different phases of your condition, okay? So I'm going to explain to you how treating pain is different to treating function, is different to treating prevention, and why if you have a treatment approach which doesn't align with the type of phase of your condition that you're in, then actually it's probably not going to work. So let's get into it. So I'm Luke, I'm the Body Zest practice owner. We're a multidisciplinary clinic in Banstead, Surrey, which is kind of like just south of London. We have osteopaths, chiropractors and different practitioners here. I'm an osteopath myself, so I've treated thousands of patients, helped a lot of people get out of pain, and understanding this three-step approach is a really important tool that we have for getting consistent results across the board, and I can absolutely teach you how to implement it in your life wherever you are. So the first thing to understand is the difference between what pain is, what dysfunction is, and actually what a lack of resistance is to prevent a problem occurring. So pain is obviously pain. Pain is a sensation, it's a feeling that people get. It can be to do with tissue damage. Sometimes it can just be to do with the body trying to warn you about something that isn't working. But essentially, if we're isolating this for the sake of this conversation, pain is just the feeling that you get from your body. Now, a lack of function is different. The way that we look at function here is we look at movement, okay? So if a joint is supposed to be able to, flex forward and rotate round, and it can't do that, there's a range of motion that it should have, which it doesn't currently have. And that's then presenting as, when I try and get into the car, I can't do it. Downstream from that is pain, or when I try and get out of bed, it feels very stiff. These are all kind of like dysfunctional patterns which we see. So they are slightly different to pain. It's more about a lack of movement. And the last one then is resilience in the body, which also feeds into prevention, okay? So if you don't have strength, if you don't have resilience in the body, you don't have the ability for it to cope with a certain amount of stress without flaring up, then that is a different thing entirely to pain, okay? So pain's a subjective feeling, function is how well things are moving, and then resilience and prevention are how well your body can cope with stress. So this is really important to understand, because right now, if you've got pain, then the most important thing for the majority of people is to try and reduce that pain. Now, I can't speak broadly for everybody, but for the most part, we can deal with people's pain symptoms before we need to deal with their function and before we need to deal with their resilience. Not for everybody, but the majority of people, there are certain techniques that we can do to start to help them with their pain, okay? So think like hot and cold therapy, think massage, think, some manipulation, stretch, like all of these things. They're kind of short term, they're helping with how it feels, but we know that they're not affecting these more kind of like root cause of the problem areas. So why this is important for you to understand is because if you've got pain, then that's the first place to start, to try and reduce that pain. Because if we, before we've dealt with the pain, start saying, okay, we're going to focus on your function, or we're going to focus on your resilience, then actually these things take quite a lot longer to actually deal with. And it might be that in an effort to try and deal with them, to try and improve your movement, to try and improve your strength, you might make your pain worse. And we see this all the time with like NHS physiotherapy. Our patients are constantly saying, they gave me exercises, it made my pain worse, so I stopped doing them. People's adherence to these exercises is really poor if it makes their pain worse. So it's really important for you to understand that dealing with the pain first in isolation is the best way to start, just to get you feeling better, and then you move on to improving the function. So when we focus on people's function, then we're thinking, okay, how can we improve their movement? A lot of time that's going to be, giving you movement-based exercises and trying to encourage the body into a range of motion that it doesn't want to go into, okay? So we take it, we explore right that end of range of motion of the joint, and then for a frequency component, we give you ways that you can explore it as well. And if you do that enough, then often you can start to build back that range of motion and improve that range of motion in a joint with enough perseverance of taking it to the end range, trying not to make it too painful, but just being really consistent with it. Then when we're focusing on resilience and strength, that's when we start to say, okay, your pain has now calmed down, the movement is improved, Now let's focus on actually building more strength here. So we challenge the area, okay? You won't build strength without stressing out the muscle. It's the only way that it works. It's an adaptive process, okay? The body will not just get stronger because you want it to. It will get stronger because you stressed it out, and then it thinks to itself, if that happens to me again, I want to be able to deal with it better. So it lays down more muscle, and then you repeat the process, and it's an adaptive process which essentially is protecting itself from the future you doing the same thing to it again. We can't do those parts if someone's in pain really successfully, so that's why we try and deal with things in that 3-step process. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing. I know sometimes it can be hard to sort of explain the way that we approach these things, but yeah, if you find that helpful, drop us a comment. If you're in the Surrey, South London area, and you want someone to approach your condition in a way that probably no one's ever approached it before, then all of our details are going to be in there too.